Thank you for purchasing the through-hole Christmas tree soldering kit from 4-Bit Industries. This walkthrough will show you how to solder the correct components into the correct places in the correct orientation. Let's start by taking an inventory of the parts in the kit. What we have in here are a PCB, a socket, chip, and switch, a bunch of LEDs of various colors, a 9-volt battery clip, 2 electrolytic capacitors, and then we have some resistors. There are 3 taped together and then 3 individual ones, and you should have all of that in your kit. Okay, so we're going to start with the resistors, and the one you want to find has a color code of red, 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 gold. And that resistor goes into this location, R1. So to prepare the resistor for soldering, bend the leads down like that. Then insert the leads into the 2 holes on either side of R1. It does not matter which way around you insert it, because resistors are not polarized. Once that's in position, flip it over and bend the leads out to hold it into position for soldering. At that point, you can use some tape or whatever you wish to hold this down for soldering. Make sure the iron touches the pad and the lead. And we'll zoom in on that. Once you've soldered it, you can use some angle cutters to cut the remaining portion of the lead. Next, let's take the LED, or the resistor that is orange, orange, yellow, gold. That goes into the position marked R2. Again, we will bend the leads down, insert into the board, and bend the leads out on the other side for soldering. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the last resistor. This one is yellow, purple, yellow, gold. And I'm going to go ahead and bend that one. And I'm going to insert that in position R3. last three resistors go into R4, R5, and R6. I like to cut them away from the tape. Alrighty. Next, let's solder in the chip socket. Now you'll notice that the chip socket has a little notch cut out of it. Let's zoom in on that. You'll see there's a little notch in the chip socket and there is a notch in the drawing of the chip socket on the board. Those two notches should align when it's inserted. You can then tape the socket into place to make sure it doesn't move while soldering. I recommend soldering one pin and then inspecting the socket to make sure it's still flat against the board. If it is, then you can go ahead and solder the rest of the pins. Looks good. Now let's solder the switch. It's best to insert the switch so that the plunger is out. That makes it easy to actuate. Again, you can use a piece of tape to hold the switch in position for soldering. To solder, start with one of the regular pins. Check to make sure that your there we go. We've soldered our pins and our two legs. That's going to make a very solid connection. Alrighty, now it's time to solder the LEDs. Now there are numerous LEDs. You may have more LEDs than you have spots to put them. That's okay. That just gives you a choice of what color to put where. But LEDs must be inserted the correct way around. Let's start with a red LED. You'll notice that each spot where an LED goes, there is a square pad and a round pad. You want the long lead of the LED to go through the hole with the round pad. And you want the short leg of the LED to go through the square pad, just like this. Just like you did with the resistors, you can bend the leads out to hold them in place for soldering. Notice that this one is oriented the other way around. Be careful when checking the pads. Make sure you have the long lead going through the round pad each time. Now, when you put the top one in, be very careful to get a good look at these two pads. There's the square one, that's the yellow one. And I always like to put a yellow one at the top to be the star. Once you have all your LEDs inserted, try to lay it as flat as you can to hold those LEDs straight for soldering. You can tape down the board if you like, but you may find that it balances well enough. And now I'm just going to solder these up one at a time. All right. It's certainly starting to look a lot more festive. So we have just a few components left, such as the electrolytic capacitors. Now you'll notice on the electrolytic capacitor there's a stripe with negative signs. That goes with the light shaded area of the capacitor footprint. So stick that in that way and bend the leads out to hold it for soldering. Now on the other side you'll notice it's in the other direction, so look for that negative stripe and keep it on the light shaded side. We'll go ahead and solder those down. And now for the last part, the battery clip. The battery clip will be soldered to the back side, so flip it over this way. Notice there's a round clip and a round pad, and then a square looking clip and a square pad. Put it in that way on the back and tape it in place for soldering. Now you're going to flip it around to the front. We're going to solder it here and here. Now it takes a good bit of heat to get this soldered. So feed some in there and then wait for it to heat up enough that the solder starts to melt. Like that. All right, now the soldering is done. The last thing we have to do is insert the chip. To straighten the leads, roll the chip against the table to straighten all the leads at once. When they look like they're in two parallel straight lines, look for the notch. There's a notch on the chip, and you'll remember there's a notch in the holder, in the IC socket. So line it up and push it all the way in. To test, simply plug in a 9-volt battery and switch the tree on. You should see the top LED light immediately. After a few seconds, the LEDs on the tree should begin blinking. And there they go. We hope you enjoyed this tree. Be sure to check out 4 Bit Industries for more.